As I've said in previous videos, the conservative and reform movements are dead. They're not dead in terms of organization now. They're doing a lot of good things and a lot of activity and wonderful people and wonderful organizations. The reason why they're dead is because young people are not coming back to them. Not only are they not having enough children, they're also having children with Gentile spouses. And although they've made it easier for conversions, the truth is the third generation ain't coming back. That's the truth. And the reason why the Orthodox are still flourishing is because, whether you like it or not, God is still alive in the Orthodox home, in the Orthodox synagogue, in the Orthodox schools. God is not found in the Reform and Conservative movement. Not the God of history, not the God of Torah. What God are you worshiping to? The God of transgenderism? The God of the Democratic Party? The God of wokeism? The God of sexual preference? What God are you talking about? There is no universal standard that can be given to children to inspire them. And if you don't believe that the Exodus took place, how are you going to get kids to be excited over Passover, over the Seder, over the Manishtan, over the Matzah? The traditions don't mean anything if there is no God, and if it didn't even happen according to their own rabbis. So it's dead because the conservative reform movement are places of worship. Worship without God don't work. It's not a social organization. That's why the people aren't coming back. There are other places to socialize. And I don't say this with glee. Please don't misunderstand me. I want the Jews to survive. I want every Jew to survive. Every Jew with every ideology, I want them to survive. How do you survive when you're not teaching about God? The answer is you got problems with God because of X, Y, and Z. I have an easy solution. That is, teach Rambam. Teach Maimonides. Forget about everything else and teach Maimonides. Why Maimonides? Well, number one, Maimonides is a universally unifying individual. Maimonides was not just a great rabbi and a great philosopher, he was a great doctor. Now, what better Jewish person could there be except somebody who was a doctor? I mean, isn't that the goal of every Jewish mother? My son, the doctor? And he was a lawyer too. He was incredible in jurisprudence. So he was a lawyer and a doctor and a philosopher to boot. So he's somebody that you can sell to every group because every group believes in him. There's a hospital, Maimonides Hospital, in Brooklyn. It wasn't started there. A lot of religious people go there, but it wasn't started by religious people necessarily, because Rambam Maimonides was a Jew who happened to be the best doctor in the world. How do we know that he was the best doctor in the world? He was the personal physician of Saladin. Saladin, who defeated Richard the Lionhearted, basically defeated him. Saladin was the most powerful man in the world at that time. He's known as Saladin, but Saladin. And he was his doctor. And the Jews were hated. Why did he have a Jewish doctor instead of a Muslim doctor? The same reason why today, in this era of wokeism, the one that people would prefer as a Jewish doctor. Not because they necessarily had higher grades. It's just this thing about them. They have this innate understanding of how to heal somebody. And it goes back to Maimonides. So how do you sell Maimonides to the Jewish schools, to the kinder? You teach them that we have goals. We have goals in life to reach. And the best person to personify the goals that we look for in a human being is Maimonides. Not only was he a doctor, he had the great legal mind to write the most prolific book on Jewish law ever written. There are more commentaries on his book on Jewish law than any other book ever written, maybe even including the Talmud, which is the basis of his study. Maimonides was the greatest legal mind, the greatest doctor, perhaps the greatest philosopher of his time. So he's the ultimate person. This is the one that we sell. This is who we want to be, who are children. We want our children to be just like Maimonides. And he wasn't ignorant of Jewish law. He knew the Jewish law. And despite knowing the Jewish law, he became the best doctor, and he also understood science. Sciences, he was an expert in the sciences of his day. So I would sell Maimonides. And what was Maimonides' message? A human being has to be balanced. That's a wonderful message, to be balanced. Balanced emotionally, balanced intellectually. How do you get balance? The answer is delayed pleasure. You don't give in to your pleasures right away. You go ahead and you control your pleasures. And that's the reason, he says, is the basis of all of the commandments. To learn how to be balanced, how not to be totally self-indulgent. We have a generation of people in America that are obese because they can't close their mouths. Whatever they desire, they can eat, and they can eat right away. Especially if you got problems, they eat themselves into obesity, and they can't get rid of the weight. And this becomes a major industry in the country, losing weight. So if you don't want to be too fat and ugly, you want to be balanced. How do you get to be balanced? How do you get not to be controlled by drugs? You have to have balance. You have to be in charge of yourself. So how do you learn to be in charge? And how do you learn to have delayed pleasure? And how do you learn to be a balanced person? Study Maimonides and see what he says. And he's got a lot of good advice. And you know what? He says that by following the commandments, you learn how to be balanced. You won't be extreme. Being extreme is harmful. And that sounds good to everybody. Anytime you're at an extreme, it's destructive. Well, that's what happens when you're too woke and you're too liberal. And you're too letting people do what they want. You're too permissive. That's also harmful. So you got to learn where to draw the line. How do you learn where to draw the line? Maimonides teaches you. You can learn all of that from the 8 chapters of Maimonides' introduction to the Pirkei Avot. And I can teach it to the Reform and the Conservative teachers, and they can distill from it how to apply it in their own movement. But study Maimonides. Make him your hero. Make him your paradigm of Jewish accomplishments. And it turns out that the commandments are made to teach a person how to be balanced, how not to be extreme. I mean, being religious is fanatical. No, it's not. When you're not doing the commandments, you can be at an extreme. You can be fanatical. Because if you don't observe the laws of gossip, you can badmouth anybody you talk about. You don't think there's anything wrong with it. Until somebody talks bad about you. Then you're horrified. Well, how are you going to stop people talking bad about you? Well, you got to stop talking bad about other people. Why would you do that? The answer is, Lashon Hara is very bad. Talking bad about another person is the wrong thing to do. That's a traditional Jewish value from thousands of years. How do you learn that? You learn that in the Torah. And you can get it from Maimonides. And that's a value you can teach everybody. It's a universal value. So what I'm saying to my friends to the left of me or to the right of me, don't make a difference who it is. Do you want your kids to come back into the Hebrew school and enjoy it? Do you want them to look up to their teachers? Do you want them to be better Jews? Yes or no? Do you want them just to go around half naked and looking to have sex before they turn 12 or 13? What is it that you want your kids to do? What is it that you want your kids to accomplish? Don't you want them to be more like Maimonides and less like, Snoopy Dogg or whatever his name is? Or Michael Jackson? Don't you want a Maimonides? Wouldn't you rather have a Maimonides than a Michael Jackson? I'm not talking about racism. This has got nothing to do with it. Michael Jackson was a great entertainer, the #1 entertainer of his time. Do you want a Maimonides or an entertainer? That's the question. And the answer, of course, is we want a Maimonides. We want somebody learned. We want somebody that has ethics. We want somebody that's responsible. We want somebody that's a leader. We want somebody that's not afraid of telling the truth. That's all Maimonides. So my message to all the Hebrew school teachers, to all the high school teachers out there in the Jewish community, review the life of Maimonides, review his messages, review his books, and teach it to your children. And you'll be surprised. God will be relevant again. God will come back into the Hebrew school. The problem is you're fighting against tradition when you agree, for the most part, with that tradition. It's just that you haven't had a good explainer of what that tradition is. You've only heard, well, you can't eat this and you can't eat that, and you can't do this and you can't do that. No. This is how you learn how to swim. This is how you learn how to become a great karate person. You learn how to control yourself. You learn how to say no to your passions, because saying yes just makes you addictive. So learn how to do that. How do you learn how to do that? Follow Maimonides' teachings. Don't label it the wrong way. Don't label it as orthodoxy. Don't label it as rabbinics. Label it as Judaism. The real Judaism is the Judaism of Maimonides. Not everybody agrees with it. That's okay. He's big enough and great enough for everybody to appreciate. Bring Maimonides and his teachings back into your school, and God will become relevant, and the Torah and the commandments will be relevant, and your Judaism will be relevant, because everything you stand for, you can find in Maimonides.